I just want to go the distance. Rocky wasn't just a boxing movie, it was a desperate gamble by a broke actor who risked everything on one impossible dream. Behind those iconic training montages and crowd-rousing fights lay a production so chaotic, so underfunded, and so filled with real-world drama that the movie almost never made it to theaters. We're talking about guerrilla filmmaking in the streets of Philadelphia, actors getting genuinely hurt, studios trying to steal the project from its creator, and a lead performance so raw it changed Hollywood forever. From the real-life boxer who inspired the story to the shocking casting decisions that nearly destroyed careers, this is the untold story of 20 weird facts about Rocky that will change everything you thought you knew about this American classic. And wait until you hear the bonus fact that reveals how a completely different movie almost got made instead. Let's dive into the brutal reality behind one of cinema's greatest underdog stories. Stallone was so broke he sold his dog to make this movie. When Sylvester Stallone wrote Rocky in just 3.5 days, he wasn't living the Hollywood dream. He had just over $100 to his name and his wife was pregnant. The desperation was real. So real, in fact, that Stallone actually sold his beloved bull mastiff Butkus for $50 just to buy food. The dog he'd raised from a puppy, the one who would later appear in the movie as Rocky's companion, was gone because Stallone couldn't afford dog food. But here's where the story gets Hollywood magic. When he sold the script and got his first payment, the very first thing Stallone did was track down the buyer and pay $3,000 to get Butkus back. The man who bought the dog reportedly demanded 15 times what he'd paid, but Stallone didn't care. He needed his best friend back for the role of a lifetime. United Artists offered $360,000 for the script. Hollywood executives loved the Rocky script. They just didn't want the guy who wrote it anywhere near the camera. Stallone turned down huge sums of money when investors refused to let him take the lead role. Major studios lined up with offers starting at $125,000, climbing to $200,000, then a staggering $360,000, equivalent to over $1.7 million today. But every offer came with the same condition. Established stars like James Caan, Robert Redford, or Ryan O'Neal would play Rocky, not some unknown writer from Hell's Kitchen. Stallone's response was always the same: no deal. This wasn't about ego or artistic vision, it was survival. He knew this was his only shot at stardom and he wasn't going to watch someone else live his dream. His refusal to compromise nearly killed the project, but it's what made Rocky legendary. The entire movie was shot in just 28 days for under $1 million. Rocky was made on a shoestring budget of $1.1 million and shot in just 28 days, but those numbers don't capture the insanity of the production schedule. Director John Avildsen was shooting 15 pages of script per day when the industry standard was 3 to 5 pages. The crew worked 16-hour days, 6 days a week, racing against time and money. Every delay meant another day they couldn't afford. Stallone would rewrite scenes on set to accommodate location problems or budget constraints. The ice skating rink scene exists because they couldn't afford crowd extras for the original busy rink sequence. Instead, they rode around the empty space, creating one of the movie's most romantic moments out of pure financial necessity. The pressure was so intense that several crew members collapsed from exhaustion, but they kept rolling because stopping meant failing. The famous training sequence nearly killed the actual boxers. Those brutal training montages weren't movie magic, they were barely controlled chaos. Stallone insisted on doing most of his own training sequences, but he wasn't the only one getting hurt. The professional boxers hired to spar with Rocky were told to make it look real, and they took those instructions seriously. During one session, Stallone took a legitimate hook to the ribs that cracked 2 bones. He finished the scene anyway, and if you watch carefully, you can see him wincing in genuine pain. The meat-punching scene in the freezer caused severe bruising to Stallone's knuckles, and the side of beef actually split his skin. But the worst injury happened during the speed bag sequence. Stallone's shoulder separated, requiring him to wear a hidden sling between takes. The iconic training wasn't choreographed athleticism, it was documented suffering. Chuck Wepner, the real-life Rocky, was too messed up to play himself. While the Chuck Wepner vs. Muhammad Ali fight inspired the idea for Rocky, Wepner's real life was falling apart during production. Stallone wanted boxer Chuck Wepner to play Rocky's sparring partner, but Wepner was in a destructive cycle and failed his audition. The man who had inspired the greatest underdog story in cinema couldn't even show up sober for his screen test. Wepner's alcoholism and erratic behavior made him uninsurable, turning the inspiration for Hope into a cautionary tale. Stallone watched his hero crumble in real time, which only deepened his determination to get Rocky's story right. The fictional character succeeded where his real-life inspiration failed, making the movie both tribute and tragedy. Years later, Wepner would successfully sue Stallone for profiting from his life story, but by then Rocky had become bigger than the truth that inspired it. Carl Weathers lied his way into playing Apollo Creed. Ken Norton was initially chosen to play Apollo Creed but withdrew from the role, leading to Carl Weathers' casting. But what audiences don't know is how Weathers actually landed the part. The former NFL player showed up to his audition and immediately started trash-talking Stallone, claiming he could knock out this pretty boy actor in real life. The aggression was calculated. Weathers had studied Apollo Creed's character and realized the role needed genuine athletic arrogance, not acted bravado. His football background helped, but he completely fabricated his boxing experience. During the screen test, Weathers threw punches with such convincing technique that no one questioned his fight credentials. It wasn't until after filming Wrapped that the crew discovered Weathers had never been in a professional boxing ring. His performance wasn't method acting, it was an elaborate con that created one of cinema's greatest antagonists. The ice skating scene was rewritten because they couldn't afford extras. The ice skating date scene was originally to take place on a crowded rink. Who can afford all those background actors? Instead, they changed the scene to a time when the rink is closed and Rocky bribes the manager to let them skate alone. This budget-driven rewrite accidentally created one of Rocky's most intimate moments. The original script called for a typical movie date, crowded rink, background romance, standard Hollywood fare. But when the production realized they couldn't pay for dozens of extras, Stallone rewrote the entire scene in one night. The new version had Rocky and Adrian skating alone in an empty rink after hours, creating a magical bubble of privacy that deepened their connection. The empty space forced the actors to fill it with genuine chemistry rather than hiding behind crowd energy. Sometimes the best creative decisions are born from the worst financial constraints. Burgess Meredith thought the script was terrible. The legendary actor who would become Mickey almost walked away from Rocky because he hated the script. Meredith, known for his work on The Twilight Zone and countless prestigious films, read Stallone's screenplay and reportedly told friends it was amateurish garbage written by a muscle-bound nobody. He only agreed to the role because his agent convinced him it was 3 days of easy work for decent money. But something changed when Meredith saw Stallone's raw commitment on set. The older actor realized he wasn't watching typical Hollywood machismo, he was witnessing genuine desperation translated into performance. Meredith later admitted that Stallone's intensity forced him to dig deeper into Mickey's character than he'd originally planned. The cranky trainer became a reflection of Meredith's own initial skepticism transformed into belief. Sometimes the greatest performances come from actors who start out thinking they're slumming it. The Philadelphia Art Museum steps scene required guerrilla filmmaking. "We didn't have the money to shoot a normal union film at that time in Philadelphia," Stallone said. "The most iconic training sequence in cinema history was filmed without permits, proper equipment, or crowd control. Stallone literally ran up those steps while cinematographer James Crabe followed with a handheld camera, dodging real tourists and museum visitors. The crew had to steal shots between security rounds, hiding equipment behind pillars and pretending to be documentary filmmakers when questioned. The famous arms-raised victory pose at the top was filmed in a single take because they knew they'd be kicked out if they tried for multiple angles. Real Philadelphia joggers can be seen in the background, completely unaware they were being filmed for a movie. The spontaneous nature of the shoot gave the sequence an authentic energy that no amount of planning could have achieved. Rocky's triumph was captured through actual trespassing. Talia Shire was cast because she worked for scale. Go ahead and like and subscribe because what I'm about to tell you about Adrian's casting will shock you. Talia Shire didn't get the role of Adrian because she was Francis Ford Coppola's sister or because she'd just finished The Godfather Part 2. She got it because she was one of the few established actresses willing to work for minimum wage. The production couldn't afford anyone with serious box office draw, and most actresses' agents wouldn't even let them read for such a low-budget project. Shire was different. She believed in the script and needed the work after a string of art house films that didn't pay well. Her agent begged her not to take the role, warning it would damage her prestige after The Godfather's success. But Shire saw something in Adrian that reminded her of her own struggles as a woman in a male-dominated industry. Her performance wasn't calculated star power, it was authentic recognition of a character fighting for respect in impossible circumstances. The meat locker scene used real frozen carcasses. The brutal meat-punching sequence wasn't filmed in a movie set, it was shot in an actual Philadelphia slaughterhouse with genuine frozen beef carcasses. The production couldn't afford to build a fake meat locker, so they negotiated with a local butcher to use his facility during off hours. Animal talent isn't cheap either. Butkus, Stallone's real dog, played his fictional dog of the same name in Rocky. The temperature in the locker was a bone-chilling 28 degrees Fahrenheit, and Stallone's breath clouds were completely real. Each punch against the frozen meat sent shockwaves through his arms and shoulders, causing genuine damage to his joints. The sound of fists hitting dead flesh was so disturbing that several crew members became physically ill during filming. But Stallone insisted on using the real carcasses because fake meat wouldn't provide the resistance needed to make the training look authentic. The scene exists in a gray area between method acting and actual butchery. Apollo Creed was based on Muhammad Ali, not Rocky. Sylvester Stallone, the writer and star of the Rocky series, stated that Jack Johnson was the inspiration for the character of Creed. But what audiences don't realize is that Apollo Creed was originally written as the protagonist, not the antagonist. Stallone's first draft focused on a charismatic heavyweight champion whose career was threatened by an unknown challenger. The story was told from Apollo's perspective, a successful athlete who had everything to lose against a nobody who had nothing to lose. But as Stallone developed the characters, he realized the real drama lay with the underdog, not the champion. The script flip transformed Apollo from hero to obstacle, but traces of his original protagonist energy remained. Carl Weathers played Creed not as a villain, but as a man dealing with his own pressures and expectations. The character became complex because he was originally designed to be the audience's identification point. The final fight scene used real blood. The climactic bout between Rocky and Apollo wasn't just acted violence, it was controlled brutality that left both actors genuinely injured. Stallone and Carl Weathers agreed to pull their punches, but the intensity of the performance kept escalating until they were landing real shots. By the end of the three-day fight sequence, both men were covered in authentic cuts, bruises, and swelling. The blood you see streaming down Rocky's face isn't movie makeup, it's actual blood from legitimate facial trauma. Weathers suffered a separated shoulder during one exchange, but finished the scene because they couldn't afford to reshoot. The referee in the scene was a real boxing official who kept trying to stop the fight, not realizing the actors were supposed to keep going. Medical personnel stood by throughout filming because the line between performance and actual combat had completely disappeared. The movie almost got an X rating for violence. The Motion Picture Association of America initially threatened to give Rocky an X rating because the final fight scene was deemed too realistic and brutal for general audiences. This wasn't about content, it was about impact. The ratings board felt that Stallone and Weathers' performances were so convincing that viewers might think they were watching actual violence rather than staged combat. The bloody finale, combined with the meat locker training and street fight sequences, created a level of visceral intensity that pushed beyond typical sports movie boundaries. Director John Avildsen had to trim several seconds of the most brutal moments to secure an R rating, but even the edited version left preview audiences shaken. The irony was that Rocky's violence felt real because so much of it actually was real. The movie succeeded in blurring the line between fiction and documentary. creating an experience that felt more like witnessing actual events than watching a performance. Stallone wrote himself a black eye into the script. During the second week of filming, Stallone showed up to set with a genuine black eye from a weekend sparring session. Rather than cover it with makeup or wait for it to heal, he rewrote the script to incorporate the injury into Rocky's character arc. The black eye appears in several key dramatic scenes, adding an element of visual authenticity that makeup couldn't replicate. But the real genius was how Stallone used his actual pain to inform his performance. The tenderness around his eye affected how he held his head, how he squinted in bright light, and how he touched his face during emotional moments. These weren't acting choices, they were involuntary responses to genuine injury that deepened the character's physical reality. Stallone essentially method-acted his own accident into the film's narrative structure. The dedication was so complete that he continued sparring throughout production, ensuring Rocky's damage always looked fresh and real. The Turtles, Cuff, and Link were the only actors to appear in multiple sequels. Rocky's Turtles, Cuff, and Link appeared in Rocky in 1976 and also in Rocky Balboa in 2006. While human actors came and went throughout the franchise's 30-year span, these two reptiles maintained perfect attendance. The Turtles belonged to Stallone personally and lived in his home throughout the decades between films. Their longevity became a running joke among the production teams, but it also served as a touching symbol of continuity in Rocky's world. By the time Rocky Balboa was filmed in 2006, Cuff and Link were ancient by Turtle standards, but still healthy enough to perform. Their presence in the final film created an emotional connection for longtime fans who recognized them from the original movie. The Turtles essentially became the franchise's most reliable supporting cast members, outlasting most of the human characters and serving as living links between Rocky's past and future. The theme song "Gonna Fly Now" was recorded in one take. Bill Conti's iconic "Gonna Fly Now" wasn't just written quickly, it was recorded in a single studio session with no second chances. The production's tight budget allowed for only 4 hours of studio time, including setup and breakdown. Conti had to orchestrate, rehearse, and record the entire piece while the clock ticked toward financial disaster. The famous trumpet fanfare that opens the song was performed by a session musician who nailed it on the first attempt, which was fortunate because there was no money for additional takes. The horn section played their climactic finale while watching Stallone run up the art museum steps on a small monitor, matching their energy to his physical performance. The synchronization between music and image happened organically because both were captured under intense pressure with no room for error. The song's raw energy comes from genuine urgency. Everyone involved knew they had one shot to create something magical. John Avildsen directed Rocky and The Karate Kid back-to-back. What audiences don't realize is that director John Avildsen used Rocky as a training ground for the underdog formula he would perfect 8 years later with The Karate Kid. The two films share identical narrative structures. Unknown protagonist faces impossible odds, finds unlikely mentor, endures brutal training, and achieves moral victory through physical defeat. But Avildsen's work on Rocky taught him that the training sequences needed to be as compelling as the final confrontation. The meat-punching, stair-climbing, and one-handed push-ups in Rocky directly influenced the wax-on, wax-off sequences in Karate Kid. Both films understand that transformation happens gradually, through repetition and dedication rather than sudden inspiration. Avildsen essentially created a template for sports movies that Hollywood still follows today. Every training montage in every underdog story traces its DNA back to Rocky's Philadelphia streets. The Philadelphia Tourism Board initially hated the movie. Before Rocky became a beloved symbol of Philadelphia pride, city officials were horrified by how the film portrayed their hometown. The movie showed South Philadelphia as a collection of seedy bars, low-rent apartments, and urban decay rather than the historical landmarks the Tourism Board preferred to showcase. Early preview screenings prompted angry letters from city council members who felt Rocky made Philadelphia look like a slum. The famous art museum steps were considered an embarrassment because the scene showed people using them for exercise rather than culture. but public reaction completely reversed the city's position. When Rocky became a massive hit, Philadelphia embraced the film as authentic representation of working-class pride. The art museum steps became a tourist destination specifically because of Rocky, generating millions in visitor revenue. A bronze statue of Rocky was eventually erected, and the Rocky Steps became one of Philadelphia's most popular attractions. The city learned that authenticity trumps artifice when it comes to cultural representation. Stallone performed his own stunts despite having no insurance. The production couldn't afford stunt coordinators, body doubles, or insurance policies for dangerous sequences, so Stallone performed every physical challenge himself. This wasn't bravery, it was financial necessity disguised as creative commitment. The famous meat locker punching sequences genuinely damaged his hands and wrists. The running scenes through Philadelphia's rough neighborhoods put him at real risk from traffic and street hazards. The sparring sessions with professional boxers could have ended his acting career with one poorly blocked punch. But the most dangerous moment came during the final fight scene when Stallone insisted on taking real shots to make the blood and swelling authentic. A single miscalculated blow could have caused permanent facial damage or brain injury, ending the movie and destroying his future. The raw physicality that makes Rocky unforgettable came from an actor who literally risked everything because he couldn't afford to fake anything. Before Rocky Balboa existed, Stallone wrote a completely different screenplay called Hell's Kitchen about a sadistic loan shark who forces debtors to fight each other in underground matches. The protagonist was a vicious enforcer who showed no mercy to victims, and the story focused on graphic violence rather than redemption. But when Stallone watched the Chuck Wepner vs. Muhammad Ali fight, he realized he wanted to tell a story about hope rather than despair. He threw away 90 pages of Hell's Kitchen and started over with a simple question: what if the underdog actually had a chance? The character of Rocky Balboa emerged from Stallone's conscious decision to reject cynicism in favor of possibility. The movie that became a symbol of American optimism almost never existed because its creator initially chose darkness over light. Sometimes the greatest stories come from writers who decide to believe in their own character's potential for goodness. Rocky wasn't just made, it was forged under pressure, shaped by desperation, and tempered by genuine struggle. Every behind-the-scenes crisis became part of the film's authentic energy. Every budget constraint forced creative solutions that enhanced rather than diminished the final product. The movie succeeded because it never pretended to be bigger than it was, and everyone involved fought with the same underdog spirit as Rocky Balboa himself. What started as a broke actor's desperate gamble became cinema's greatest testament to the power of persistence over privilege, heart over budget, and dreams over circumstances. If this video taught you something new about Rocky, smash that like button and subscribe for more shocking movie secrets. Because sometimes the real story behind the camera is even more inspiring than what happens on screen. Yo, Adrian, we did it!